Funny how people unsubscribe from your life without notice. One day they swear forever, the next they're gone. But hey, if you're here, hit subscribe. It's free, unlike loyalty. I guess I'm writing this to get it out of my system. My name is Mike. I'm 31, and until recently I thought I had my life under control. No big dreams, no wild drama. Just a steady career as a software developer, a decent house in a quiet neighborhood, and what I believed was a strong marriage to the woman I loved. Laura and I met 8 years ago. Looking back, it feels like a lifetime ago. I was 23, fresh out of college and naive about life. She was 22, working as an assistant at a marketing agency, trying to figure out her own path. For the record, she never really did. Eventually, she just became a stay-at-home wife. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue, one of those casual backyard gatherings where everyone eats off cheap paper plates, and someone inevitably burns the burgers. She walked right up to me, made some sarcastic remark about how I looked like I was planning my escape. I don't even remember what I said back, but she laughed. And that was it. We talked the whole evening, and soon after, we were inseparable. Laura was everything I wasn't: spontaneous, adventurous, always chasing excitement. Last-minute road trips, new restaurants, unplanned adventures. Meanwhile, I was the grounded one. The one checking the budget, the gas tank, and the weather before we left. It worked. We balanced each other out. She brought the thrill, I brought the stability. 3 years later, we got married. Nothing extravagant, just close friends and family. We weren't from wealthy backgrounds, so there were no grand ballrooms, no over-the-top catering. But it didn't matter. It was us starting our life together. We bought a small 2-bedroom house in a quiet suburb. Not fancy, but it had potential. Our life was steady. I'd come home from work, and Laura would usually be in the kitchen or curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She'd tell me about her day, office drama, crazy clients, coworkers. She was the storyteller, I was the listener. We had no kids by choice. We both agreed to wait until we were more financially stable. And for a while, everything seemed fine. Looking back, I wonder if I got too comfortable. It's easy to fall into a routine when life feels stable. Wake up, go to work, come home, repeat. We had date nights, sure, but I stopped noticing the little things. Like how much Laura thrived on attention. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal. She was the kind of person who could light up a room, naturally drawing people in. And I just assumed that was part of who she was. I thought we were solid. Sure, we had little fights, about me forgetting the trash, her leaving shoes all over the house. Normal stuff. But the thing about relationships? They can look fine on the outside while cracks quietly form underneath. And if you're not paying attention, those cracks grow until the whole damn thing collapses. I didn't see it coming. I thought we were building something strong. But life has a way of proving you wrong. That's when Jake moved in. The guy was impossible to ignore. He bought the house next door after the elderly couple who lived there retired to Florida. He was younger than most people in the neighborhood, about 28. A personal trainer. Fit, confident, the kind of guy who looked like he walked straight out of a movie. And he was always outside. Washing his car. Mowing his lawn. Setting up a pull-up bar in his yard. I didn't know it then, but Jake wasn't just my new neighbor. He was the beginning of the end. There was always a reason for him to be shirtless. Jake quickly became the talk of the neighborhood, and Laura noticed him right away. How could she not? We first met him one Saturday morning when he walked over to introduce himself. He was charming in that effortless way, the kind of guy who could make anyone feel like they'd known him forever. Laura jumped into a conversation with him immediately, asking where he was from, what he did for a living, how he liked the neighborhood. I just stood there, nodding and smiling, barely able to get a word in while they talked like old friends. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Laura was friendly with everyone. She could hold the same kind of lively conversation with the mailman or the guy at the hardware store. But looking back, I can see it now, the small changes that started to happen. It began with casual chats. Laura always seemed to have a reason to be outside when Jake was. Little things, checking the mail, watering the plants, taking out the trash. But somehow, these brief tasks would turn into 10 or 15-minute conversations. One evening, I came home from work and found them standing in the driveway. Laura was holding a basket of laundry she had been carrying to the garage, while Jake leaned casually against his car, laughing at something she had said. When I walked up, they both turned to me and Laura quickly brushed it off. "Oh, Jake was just telling me about his new gym equipment," she said lightly. I let it go. But it didn't stop there. A few weeks later, Laura suddenly decided to bake cookies. She hadn't done that in months. I didn't think much of it, until I saw her walking across the yard with a plate of them in hand. "Just being neighborly," she said with a shrug when I asked. It shouldn't have bothered me. She'd done the same for other neighbors before. But then there were the other things. Like the new workout clothes, tight, brightly colored leggings and a matching top. Not something she typically wore. "I'm thinking about getting back into jogging," she explained when I asked about it. "You know, getting back into shape." It made sense. Laura had gone through workout phases before, getting excited for a few weeks, then losing interest. But this time her timing was perfect. Jake jogged every morning. And suddenly so did Laura. One morning as I was leaving for work, I saw them standing on the sidewalk. Laura was stretching while Jake demonstrated how to avoid shin splints. They were smiling, laughing. I didn't say anything. Just gave a small wave and drove off. But something about the scene stuck with me. Then came the change in her phone habits. Laura had always been glued to her phone, scrolling through social media, chatting with friends. But now she was careful. If I walked into the room, she'd quickly lock her screen or flip the phone over. One night I caught a glimpse. She was scrolling through Instagram and Jake's name was right there at the top. She quickly swiped past it, but I'd seen enough. When I asked her about it, she barely hesitated. "Oh, I was just checking out his fitness posts," she said. "He has some good workout advice." I wanted to believe her. But then came the laughter. One evening I was working in the garage when I heard it, Laura's laugh. The kind of laugh that wasn't just polite or friendly. The kind of laugh that meant something. I stepped outside to find them standing by the fence, grinning, iced tea in Laura's hand, Jake gesturing animatedly as he told some story. Laura saw me and waved like nothing was out of the ordinary. "Jake was just telling me something funny that happened at his gym," she said later. I tried to shake it off. But I wasn't stupid. There was something different about the way she talked about him. A new energy in her voice. It was no longer just, "Oh, I saw Jake outside today." Now it was, "Jake's thinking about getting a dog. Jake recommended this great protein shake." It wasn't what she was saying that bothered me. It was how much she wanted to say it. It wasn't just what she said. It was how she said it. The small glances she stole in Jake's direction, the way her voice seemed lighter when she talked about him, the sudden shift in her energy whenever he was around, it all started to form a pattern. And once I noticed it, I couldn't ignore it. But still I stayed quiet. I told myself I was being paranoid. That Laura was someone I trusted. We'd been together for years, built a life together. She wouldn't betray that, right? And yet, doubt settled in the back of my mind. So I started paying closer attention. Then came the morning that changed everything. It was a Saturday, an ordinary, quiet morning. I woke up early like I always did, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat at the kitchen table scrolling through the news. The house was silent except for the soft hum of the coffee machine. For a brief moment I felt peaceful. It's funny how that works. You think everything is fine, because you have no idea what's about to happen. An hour later, Laura finally emerged from the bedroom. Her hair was messy from sleep, phone in one hand, rubbing her eyes with the other. She sat across from me at the table, but something was off right away. She was fidgety. Drumming her fingers against the table, eyes darting to her phone like she was avoiding looking at me. I set down my own phone. "You okay?" She hesitated, nodded quickly, then shook her head. "Actually, no." I felt my stomach tighten. Everyone in a relationship knows those words rarely mean anything good. I tried to stay calm. "All right. What's going on?" Laura took a deep breath like she was psyching herself up. Her gaze flickered around the room, like she was searching for the right words. Then finally she just said it. "I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to say it. I think I have feelings for Jake." For a moment I thought I'd misheard her. "What?" I asked, leaning forward as if being closer would make it make sense. She bit her lip, visibly uncomfortable. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said quickly, rushing the words out before I could react. "It just happened. I've been spending time with Jake and I feel this connection, and now I'm confused." That word, confused, hit harder than anything else. She wasn't saying she'd made a mistake. She wasn't apologizing. She was trying to figure it out. Like this was some puzzle she needed to solve. I just stared at her, my mind racing. Did she mean she wanted to leave me? Was she asking for a divorce? Was she confessing so she could move on? I had no idea. And that made it worse. "So, what does this mean?" I finally asked. "Are you saying you're done with us?" She shook her head fast. "No, not necessarily," she said. I don't know what I want right now." And then she had the nerve to say, "I love you, Mike. I do. But I can't stop thinking about him. And I need to figure out what these feelings mean." As if our marriage, our entire life together, was now just a gray area for her. She wasn't sure she wanted to be with me anymore. Hearing those words from the woman I had built my life with was surreal. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. So, what are you saying? You want to take a break? Laura hesitated, then nodded. Kind of, she admitted. I need time to figure things out. I was thinking, maybe I could take a month to spend some time with Jake. See if there's something real there. If it doesn't work out, then we can focus on ourselves. I blinked. I had expected some kind of confession. Maybe even a request for separation. But this was audacious. You're serious? I asked. She nodded, her gaze almost pleading. I know it sounds crazy, but I don't want to throw away what we have without being sure. She sighed, her voice trembling slightly. I don't want to live with regrets, you know? That word, regrets, stuck in my mind like a splinter. She was talking about her regrets as if she was the one making the sacrifice. As if my feelings, my commitment, my trust were secondary to her need to explore her options. I sat there, staring at her, my emotions swirling between anger and disbelief. Part of me wanted to yell, to tell her how selfish she was being. But another part of me, the calmer, more calculated side, chose to let her dig her own hole. I leaned back in my chair and nodded. All right. Laura blinked, caught off guard. Wait, really? I shrugged. Sure. If you think that's what you need, go ahead. Her expression flickered. She wasn't sure if I was serious or mocking her. I just think it's the best way to figure out where my heart is, she said cautiously. Sure. Inside I was already done. The moment she suggested leaving to spend a month with another man, something inside me shut off. But I wasn't going to fight her. If she was willing to abandon our marriage for a maybe, then I wanted to see how far she would go. Laura let out a sigh of relief, as if she had been given permission to do something noble. Thank you, she murmured, reaching across the table to touch my hand. I know this is a lot to ask, but I really believe it's the right thing for us. I stood up, taking my coffee mug with me, pulling my hand away as I did. If that's what you need. She sat there, probably expecting an argument. A fight. Some resistance. But I gave her nothing. Over the next few days, Laura packed a small bag. She told me she'd be staying with Jake, making it sound like some temporary arrangement. She never seemed to notice that I wasn't asking questions, that I wasn't showing any concern. When she finally left, the house felt different. Not empty, just quieter. Like someone had turned down the volume on my life. I stood in the living room for a while, staring at the front door. I expected to feel anger or heartbreak, but all I felt was peace. Like a weight had been lifted. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and just stood there trying to process what had just happened. My wife, someone I had expected to grow old with, had walked out to figure things out with the guy next door. If this wasn't my life, I would have thought it was a bad TV drama. The first few days felt strange. I started noticing little things she had left behind. Her favorite coffee mug on the counter, a pair of shoes by the door, a blanket draped over the couch. I thought about moving them, but in the end I left them where they were. Not because I missed her. Because I didn't want to waste energy on her anymore. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects to fill my schedule. I stayed late at the office not because I needed to, but because I didn't want to come home to an empty house. When I wasn't working, I started going to the gym. I had never been much of a gym guy before, but there was something satisfying about pushing myself physically. Like I could sweat out all the frustration. People started noticing. Friends asked where Laura was, and I kept my answers vague. She's staying with a friend for a while. I wasn't ready to tell the real story. Not yet. The only person I told the full truth to was my dad. A few days after Laura left, I called him. And the first thing he asked was, "What's wrong?" Because my dad? He's always been able to read me. Even over the phone. When I told my father what had happened, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then he finally said, "Well, son, I hate to say it, but it sounds like you're better off without her." At first, I wasn't sure how to respond. I had expected him to be angry on my behalf, to ask more questions, maybe even to offer some kind of reassurance. But then he added something that stuck with me. If she doesn't know your worth, why should you wait around for her to figure it out? He was right. I had spent so much time trying to understand Laura's decision, trying to figure out where I went wrong, that I had never stopped to consider what I deserved. I wasn't just a backup plan in case her fling with Jake didn't work out. That night, I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, staring at the wedding photo on the mantel. We had looked so happy in that picture. So certain of our future. But now, it just felt like a relic of something that had already crumbled. By the end of the week, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to sit around and wait for Laura to choose me. I was going to make my own choice. The next day, I called a divorce attorney. Sitting in his office felt surreal. I explained everything, trying to keep my voice steady, even though a part of me still couldn't believe this was my reality. The lawyer listened carefully, nodding as I spoke. When I finished, he said, "You are well within your rights to file for divorce. This falls under irreconcilable differences." Hearing those words made something click in my head. Irreconcilable differences. That's what we had become. Laura and I weren't on the same page anymore. Maybe we never had been. The lawyer walked me through the process, what to expect, what steps to take. By the time I left his office, I felt something strange. Satisfaction. As if, for the first time in a long time, I was back in control of my life. Back home, I started making quiet preparations. I transferred money to a separate account, just in case things got messy later. I walked through the house, mentally dividing what was mine and what was hers. I didn't touch her things yet. I figured I'd wait until everything was official. But in my head, I was already redesigning the house without her in it. The days stretched into weeks. And to my surprise, the silence didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. In fact, it was peaceful. I didn't have to listen to Laura's constant chatter. I didn't have to deal with little disagreements over who left dishes in the sink. Meanwhile, the rumors started trickling in. A neighbor mentioned seeing Laura and Jake at the park, looking cozy. Someone else spotted them at a downtown cafe. I nodded, smiled, acted like it didn't bother me. But inside, I was furious. Not because I wanted her back, but because she had thrown everything away for a fling with a man who was never going to stick around. And deep down, I knew she was going to realize it too. By the third week, I had stopped checking my phone for her texts. I figured if she wanted to talk, she would reach out. But I wasn't holding my breath. I was done waiting. One night, while cleaning out the garage, I stumbled across an old box of photos. Pictures from when Laura and I first met. For a brief moment, I felt a sharp pang of sadness. We had been happy once. But then I remembered all the red flags I had ignored over the years. All the times I had put her needs above mine without even realizing it. I closed the box and shoved it aside. I didn't need those memories anymore. Then, exactly 1 month after she left, Laura came back. I hadn't heard much from her during her trial run with Jake. The few texts she had sent were vague at best. "Hope you're doing okay. We'll talk when I get back." She hadn't even pretended to be conflicted. She had dismissed me as Plan B. But by then I had already filed for divorce. My lawyer had the paperwork ready. As far as I was concerned, our marriage was over. But I didn't tell her that just yet. When she walked through the front door, she looked the same. Like nothing had changed. Like she had just come back from a vacation and expected everything to be waiting for her. "Hey," she said, setting her bag down. "I'm back." I barely looked up from the couch. I was flipping through TV channels, keeping my voice neutral. "Welcome back." She hesitated, probably expecting more of a reaction. When I didn't give her one, she walked over and perched on the arm of the couch. "We should talk." I muted the TV and turned to her, crossing my arms. "All right," I said. "Talk." Laura smiled, that same charming smile she always used when she wanted to smooth things over. "I've done a lot of thinking," she began, "and I've realized some things about myself. About us. About what I want." I just nodded, waiting. She took a deep breath, as if she was about to deliver some big revelation. "I care about you, Mike. I really do. And I think we can work through this. I think we can rebuild what we had." Rebuild? As if fixing a marriage was as simple as patching up a leaky faucet. I said nothing. Just stared at her, letting her fill the silence. She faltered but kept going. "Jake's a great guy," she admitted, and I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing at how casually she said it. "But I realized he's not what I need. He's fun, sure, but he's immature. He doesn't have the stability that you have." I think I just got caught up in the excitement of it all. There it was. She had tried out the shiny new toy and decided she liked the old one better. "Uh-huh," I said, my voice cool. Laura blinked, as if expecting a bigger reaction. "I know I hurt you," she whispered, reaching out to touch my arm. "But I really believe we can get past this. We've been through so much together, Mike. We have history. That's not something you just throw away." I let her talk. Let her say all of her practiced lines about love and forgiveness. Then, when she finished, I stood up, walked to the kitchen counter, opened a drawer, and placed the divorce papers in front of her. Her smile vanished. "What's this?" she asked, her voice uneasy. "Divorce papers." She went pale. "You're kidding." "Nope." For a moment she just stared at them. Then she looked up at me, eyes wide. You're divorcing me? Yeah, I said, my voice steady. I'm not interested in being your second choice, Laura. Her shock turned to anger. That's not what this is, she snapped. I was confused, Mike. I needed time to figure things out. And in the process you left, I said calmly. You walked out on our marriage. And now you're back because it didn't work out with him. She opened her mouth to argue, then shut it. She knew I was right. You made your choice, Laura. I pushed the papers toward her. Now I'm making mine. Finally, she stormed out of the house. I stood there for a moment, staring at the empty space where she had been, feeling nothing. No sadness. No regret. No second thoughts. Just relief. Later that night, I called my lawyer to inform him that Laura had seen the divorce papers. How'd she take it? He asked. Not great, I replied with a smirk. Do you want to give her time to process, or should we move forward? Move forward, I said without hesitation. It wasn't easy standing up to Laura, but I knew it was the right thing to do. She had treated me as a backup plan, expecting me to wait around just in case her fling didn't work out. If she truly believed I would accept that, then she never really knew me. I knew she wouldn't give up easily. Laura was never one to walk away from a fight, especially one she thought she was losing. Sure enough, the next evening, there was a loud pounding on my front door. Mike, open the door, she shouted. I took a deep breath before opening it. What do you want, Laura? She barged past me as if she still lived here. We need to talk, she said, pacing the living room. You can't just file for divorce without giving me a chance to fix things. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You had your chance, I replied calmly. You made your decision when you left. That's not fair, she snapped. I didn't leave to end our marriage. I left to figure things out, to make sure I wasn't making a mistake by staying. I let out a dry laugh. And in doing that, you proved you didn't value what we had. You don't test a marriage by running off to someone else, Laura. That's not how it works. She stopped pacing, her eyes burning with frustration. I was confused, she insisted, her voice shaking. I didn't know what I wanted, but I know now. I want us, Mike. I want to fix this. Too late, I said firmly. You don't get to come back now just because things didn't work out with Jake. Her expression hardened as she pointed a finger at me. You're being petty, she accused. You're throwing away everything we built over one mistake. I shook my head. It wasn't just one mistake, Laura. It was a series of choices. You chose to flirt with Jake. You chose to prioritize your feelings for him over our marriage. And then you chose to leave. Those weren't accidents. They were decisions. She opened her mouth to argue but stopped, her shoulders sagging. For the first time she looked defeated. What am I supposed to do now? She whispered. I sighed. That's not my problem anymore. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. She stood there for another moment as if hoping I'd change my mind. But then, without another word, she turned and walked out. The final goodbye. The divorce proceedings went quickly. At first, Laura tried to stall, maybe thinking I'd reconsider. She even played the victim in front of mutual friends, painting me as cold and unfeeling. But my father had my back. She's got some nerve, he said when I told him what was happening. But I'm proud of you, son. Standing your ground isn't easy, but it's the right thing to do. Laura's tactics didn't work. My lawyer was sharp, and the fact that she had left me for another man made things crystal clear. She even tried to push for spousal support, claiming she had given up her career for our marriage, but the judge wasn't buying it. In the end, we reached a fair settlement. She got a small sum of money and some of the furniture she had picked out. I kept the house and most of my savings. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than I had expected. The final court hearing was bittersweet. Signing those papers, officially ending our marriage, felt surreal. I glanced over at Laura. She looked exhausted, as if she hadn't slept in days. Her lawyer handed her a pen, and for a second I thought she might refuse to sign. But after a long pause, she did. As we left the courtroom, she approached me. Mike, she said softly, just above a whisper. I'm sorry for everything. I studied her face, searching for the woman I had fallen in love with all those years ago. But all I saw was someone I used to know. I know you are, I said. But sorry doesn't fix this. Tears welled up in her eyes. She reached out as if to hug me, but I stepped back. Take care of yourself, Laura, I said before walking away. Moving on. From time to time, I'd hear about Laura through mutual friends. Jake had moved on to someone else shortly after she left me, and last I heard she was living with a relative trying to figure out her next steps. I didn't feel satisfied hearing about her struggles. But I didn't feel sorry for her either. She had made her choices and now she had to live with the consequences. One day I ran into her at the supermarket. Our eyes met briefly, and I could see regret written all over her face. She gave me a hesitant wave, but I just nodded and walked past. There was nothing left to say. Looking back, I have no regrets. Laura thought she could have it both ways, that she could chase a new thrill and then come back to me if it didn't work out. But life doesn't work that way. I've learned a lot through this experience. Most importantly, I now understand that I deserve someone who values and respects me, not someone who keeps me as a backup plan. And if that person is out there, great. If not, that's okay too. For now, my priority is rebuilding my life on my own terms. What about you? Have you ever been in a situation like this? Have you ever had to stand up for yourself and walk away from something that no longer served you? If this story resonated with you, let us know in the comments. And if you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe for more eye-opening real-life stories. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, know your worth, and never settle for being someone's second choice.